Okay, welcome back. Part two of JHAs. We're going to get into a little bit more detail here when it comes to job hazard analysis. I want to do a recap, if possible, here. What we covered last time. So I will share screen. There we go. All right, good. So JHA explained. So going to finish this PowerPoint. uh, Keep us focused on what our our goal is, and then we'll go into um, the current form that I like to share out when it comes to JHAs. So so what JHA means, right? Job hazard analysis is essentially what that means. What's the purpose of a JHA? Right, it's breaking down the job steps and the tasks, analyzing those job steps, evaluating your risks, and then any kind of mitigation factors you need to implement to decrease that risk. What's the severity hood, likelihood of something happening? What's your controls? Right, it helps give you a good plan over that job, broken down by job steps. Benefits of JHA, right? I just stated that it really analyzes the job, the steps of the job, or the task that you may be having, whether it's a routine or a non-routine task. It's great to go through and okay, with a group of people or a team or even yourself one-on-one. Okay, for this job, I need to do this, A, B, C, one, two, three, whatever you want to do. And then analyzing, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? What's the likelihood of that happening? Um, and then what are our control measures, or what are some control measures that we need to implement? How jobs are selected and who participates, right? Jobs can be selected in different variations. It could be, if it's a non-routine task, especially that has a high risk, maybe involves a SIF or a PSIF, right? A severe injury or fatality risk, or potential for severe injury or fatality risk. One of those, um, definitely job tasks. Near misses, new operations, anything that you want. It could be routine tasks. You could take SOPs in your department and figure out, okay, what are some things that we do all the time? We could grab those out. Let's do a JHA on it. How can we improve the safety of that job or that task going forward? Inspections to identify hazards, right? Obviously, when you do any kind of inspections, inspect JHA, you're doing the JHA and you're inspecting your area, you're going to identify additional hazards you may want to incorporate into the job hazard analysis. Okay, so steps into JHA. I don't think we really touched on this last time a whole lot. You really probably can't see the wording there very well on the screen, but it's breakdown the job, right, into different steps, identify the hazards, you evaluate the hazards, determine safe procedures and protective preventative measures, and then you revise the JHA. And it's a continual kind of check, do, act, inspect process. All right, I guess if I do that, it does highlight the wording pretty well. So you break down the job. List each task in order of occurrence, describe each action, consider the conditions, think about the safety issues, right? But when you're breaking down the job task, you don't have to get extremely granular, you can kind of make some things, you know, all encompassing, you don't want to say, hey, I walked over to this area to find X part, right? You maybe want to skip that, or you want to incorporate or combine it, right? We'll go through some examples here in a second, which would be great. Identifying the hazards, right? What are the hazards that you're looking at, the potential hazards or hazards that are affected? It doesn't have to be physical hazards, it could be, you know, other things, right? If you're thinking about chemical, um, some kind of inhalation hazard, electrical shock potential, things like that. Harmful airborne contaminants, like I said, repetitive motions, ergonomic wise, it's always a big one when it comes to manufacturing and even construction. Heat cold, um, radiation, it's a good one. Slippery surfaces, you want to evaluate the hazards. Is this a safety or a health hazard, right? Is it going to be, dangerous to your health and longevity, right? Is it carcinogenic? What are you handling? What are you using? Is it some kind of solvent, some kind of acid, right? Is it both a safety and a health hazard, right? Could the hazard cause an injury or an illness? How serious is the risk, right? So the one thing that the form that I use looks at is also the severity of that risk, right? You have risks in everything that you do. It's just grading, the frequency of being exposed to that hazard, and then the severity of something would go wrong. Is the hazard always present? Maybe it's not. Maybe it's only present during certain situations, right? That's something you gotta be able to talk through when you're doing your JHA. Um, are engineering and administrative controls effective? Is the right PPE being used? These are some things that we want to talk about when thinking about control methods, current or, um, you know, maybe not current state, but it could be current state, but also, future state as well. Is safety training creating sufficient awareness? So is the current training that we currently do, whether it's through the LMS or it's hands-on or it's on the job training, is that does that suffice? I think there's a lot of debate on this. I know with JBT anyway, we can look at different LMSs that we've installed, but also using third-party professionals come in and do some training. Are protective measures adequate? Current protective measures, right? PPE, you need the right PPE. We need different safety glasses. Do we need, a different type of respirator because that respirator isn't, the proper one for that kind of contaminant? Determine safe procedures and protections. Perform the job differently. Reconfigure the work area, workstations. So these are some things that we can look at from a controls or changes or actions that we can determine or come up from when you're doing and conducting a JHA. Substitute less hazardous material, right? During a job hazard analysis or risk assessment, right? We're looking at that risk. What can we do to mitigate that risk? Maybe it's substituting out or eliminating that material that we're using with something a lot safer. Change from manual to mechanical, right? Ergonomic standpoint, um, insulating or cleaning. Add and improve change and safety training, right? So we're looking at, procedures and precautions again, change tooling equipment, change to different type of PPE, perform certain tasks left often, right? So that's more of an administrative control, right? You can only be in this area for this long because it's extremely hot or extremely cold. Or you can only do so many repetitions because of just the ergonomic risk. So we want to eliminate or limit that exposure. And then step 5, you're going to revise the JHA when an accident, injury, or work-related, issue occurs. Right, we're going to look at any kind of injury that would happen or near miss or work-related issue. Maybe it's property damage, environmental release, whatever it might be. We want to evaluate that task, and then okay, do we have an SOP? Okay, is the SOP, is there a JHA or a hazard assessment for that task or that job? If there's not, we need to create one. If there is, we need to revise it. Right, that's the simple process. And again, it takes a village. It doesn't shouldn't be on just the safety professional to do this. You need involvement from the employees, supervisors, management staff to all be involved and all buy in this, right? The EHS professionals there to highlight these areas of emphasis, but we need support from others to be able to get this done. Again, after a near miss, when a job change, right? Maybe there's a job change, maybe there's a change in the work environment, which requires maybe an MOC, management and change process. And with that, we want to revise or establish a JHA at that time. Following an employee safety complaint, safety suggestion, near miss, etc. For sure. Again, like I stated in the first thing, it could be property damage, environmental release, whatever it might be. We can definitely need to revise or revisit the JHA and review it with the staff involved. Of course, scheduled review. You always want to try to review these at least annually, depending on how frequently they are the jobs are done. My preference is, especially if it's more of a non-routine task, something maybe you don't do weekly or monthly, maybe it's every 6 months or every year you got something you have to do, right? We have that JHA, and as part of the checklist of the pre-job assessment is to review that JHA. The JHAs definitely can be used for new hires to review the job steps. Not only are we looking at and how to do the job properly, but we're also analyzing the risks that are involved in the mitigating factors to help eliminate those risks. And then, you can think about the consequences and severities of something would happen. And then also, you're getting input from, somebody currently from the external that sees this without any kind of complacency or past experience involved. A fresh mind, a fresh set of eyes is always beneficial when it comes to JHAs. Control method hierarchy, right? So pictograms, engineered controls, substitution. Maybe we have administrative controls, and then last we have PPE, right? Just that in a nutshell. Here's one example form. And then a recap here. So how to break down a job for a JHA. Do you understand that, right? If you don't, go back through this video. If you want to request this PowerPoint, you can contact me. That should not be too hard. How to identify hazards, how to evaluate your hazards, how to determine safe procedures and protections, right? There's no wrong suggestions when you're doing a JHA. You need to think about every aspect of the job and the job steps and what the risks could be. And then when a JHA should be revised, right? Those are some good things. Some additional key points. JHA is an essential part of any effective safety program. I agree. I think it's been a big emphasis. It's always an emphasis. Things kind of go in waves a little bit, but you got a good near miss, proactive metric program. Part of that should encompass JHAs, risk assessment, especially if you have field work, or even if you have any kind of work, factory work, construction work. You should have some type of risk assessment, hazard assessment, job hazard assessment, job safety analysis, however you want to define it. There's more than one way to skin a cat. That should be part of your program. Your participation in JHA is important. We need participation. We need active participation, right? Active is key. And that's it for that PowerPoint. What I'll do now is I will share the example JHA that I have here. Give it a second. All right, so this is the one that I like to use through the current company, JBT. Obviously, you can say it's a modifiable document where you can change the header if you wanted to. But again, you list your job steps. That's critical. All this information, this is important information. And actually, what I'll do here is I'll switch my screen so I'm not sideways looking at you here. Second. All right, there we go. That's a little better. So you get your date, you want to date it, obviously. Plant's not important, but if you have multiple plants, multiple building numbers, wherever you do your JHA, wherever this task is being done, you can identify that there. You can modify any of these columns if you want to. The equipment number, if you're working on a specific equipment, right, maybe it has a job number, process number, whatever the process is. You can kind of keep it simple that way. And then you list your job steps, and you have your potential hazards, your consequences, your probability of occurrence, frequency, severity, and then your control methods. So this risk score that we do, I haven't defined what an adequate risk score is. Obviously, an adequate risk score would be there'd be no risk at all, but there's always going to be risk in anything that we do, and it calculates that pretty well. So obviously, the higher the score is, the more attention to that job step or task that we need to um, pay attention to, right? Is there other controls that we can implement that can decrease that risk, right? The hazard's going to be there, but can we decrease that risk, right? And what I like about this is you do have cheat sheets where it already looks at what your drop down options are, helps you define what these also are, right? Your workload, if you talk about that, in the JHA portion here, whatever the workload may be, if you want to know what we consider, a heavy workload, lifting 100 pounds, frequently carrying 50 pounds, right? Medium workload, light workload, or like a sedentary workload. And then your probability, your frequency, your severity, and then your controls, right? If you have an engineering control, you're not going to multiply anything from um, the current risk. But if you don't have anything, it's going to multiply that by 5. That's essentially how this form works. Do you have a printable version too? You can print this out. But here, what you do is you pick your drop from your drop down, right? You just pick something. Your consequences. What would be the worst case scenario, right? Maybe you fractured a bone. What's the probability of that happening? You want to rank that. And if you don't know what the rank is, right? Is it likely? Is it low? Maybe every 2 to 3 years? Is it medium? Is it high every year or less? Same way with your frequency, right? Do you do it once per year or longer, once a month, once a week, once per day? And then your severity, negligible, marginal, critical, catastrophic, right? Loss of life, property, critical severe injury, illness, major property damage. That's how that all is defined here. But just for an example, I'll just put probability is there. Maybe it's a 3 there, and you can see, 3 times 3 is 9. Severity, maybe it's a 2, got 18. And then your controls, maybe you don't have any controls. It'll multiply that by 5. But if you have one, then it drops it down, right? And then you can add your current controls or things that are needed in here, and you can grow this more and more. Your kind of snippet cliff notes of your cheat sheet is here as well. This seems like a good form to me that I like, because I like how it multiplies and it gives you a good risk score. Um, I don't know if I want to put, a numerical value on, okay, this is an adequate risk score, this isn't an adequate risk score. I think it all has risks. Everything that you do, you get up in the morning and you commute to work, you have a risk, but where do you have control methods in there? Do you wear your seatbelt? Do you follow the speed limit? Do you obey all the traffic laws? Right? Are you distracted or non-distracted when you're driving? We always, manage those risks on a daily basis. Some we do better than others. All right. But you're always going to have a risk score. The higher the risk score, the more attention it needs. That's essentially what that means. So that's the JHA form that we use. So again, this is kind of the part 2, probably the last version of the JHA portion of this podcast, newsletter, however you want to define it. Again, I only do this in one take, so I probably made a couple mistakes or stumbled through some wording, or said too many times, but that's, I like it to be real and raw. So if you have any questions, just let me know. Give me a call, send me an email, shoot me a message. If not, I will see you in a couple weeks for a different safety topic. Everybody have a great day. Thank you.